Steve Areno's Italian Eatery is your go-to spot for delicious eats and good vibes. Offering mouth-watering pizzas with all your favorite toppings, pasta dishes that'll make your taste buds dance, killer burgers, and amazing steaks too. Whether you're grabbing a quick bite with friends or enjoying a laid-back dinner with family, Steve Areno's has got you covered. So head over to Chattanooga's North Shore where you can kick back, relax, and let Steve Areno's take care of the cooking. Steve Areno's Italian Eatery is a proud supporter of Cadis.
The Flying Locksmith is your trusted partner in all things security, offering commercial security systems, security cameras, audio and video intercom systems, supply, installation, and commercial-grade door hardware. In need of hands-free hardware to reduce the spread of germs? Worry no more, because the Flying Locksmiths are here to save the day. With fast response times and top-notch service, they'll be sure to keep you safe, secure, and protected in no time. Unlocking peace of mind, one lock at a time. Flying Locksmiths is a proud supporter of alcohol and drug abuse recovery at Cadis. Welcome to Scarred But Smarter podcast, hosted by Jeff Stiles, presented by Cadis, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, sharing relatable stories of addiction recovery along with our hearts, our voices, and an abundant amount of love with all of those affected by the disease of addiction. We thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey. And now, here is your host, Jeff Stiles.
Hey folks, welcome to Scarred But Smarter, the still brand spanking new, as far as I'm concerned, podcast sponsored by Cadis, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services. And Mary Catherine Gentry, the woman whose brainstorm this originally was, is in here with us as always. And Mary Catherine, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jeff. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for bringing us interesting guests every couple of weeks. And we're now, what is this, the fifth show into this
I
little
believe
venture?
So, yeah.
And it's going
Fifth
very,
one.
very well. So people, be sure to listen on the first and third Mondays of every month. I think that's pretty much what we're going to shoot for. And make sure that you share it with your friends.
Absolutely.
We want this thing to take over. Our guest today is Mr. Michael Brandt. And Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for allowing me to be here.
It is our pleasure to have you. And Michael is, as of right now, I guess he's a mentor. He's a bon vivant, man about town, but mostly welding is his thing. And it's not just his job, it is his passion in life, and it is part of his recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. And that's as good a place to start as any. Michael, just kind of give us a brief explanation, the definition, and say hi.
Hello, Michael Brandt here from GarageBound LLC. I live here in Chattanooga. I came here in 2006 after being released from federal prison. I had to do just about 6 years in federal prison for drug trafficking, got in a bunch of trouble in Idaho. So anybody wants to find trouble, Idaho's a good place.
I was gonna actually say that before you even got to it. I was thinking that's a great place to go to get in trouble these days, from what I can tell.
That's funny, but I just wasn't really happy with life anymore on life's terms when I was doing drugs. And I vividly remember the day the DEA and the FBI cornered me in a hotel room with all their guns in my face. I just took a deep breath and told myself, I don't have to do this anymore. This is my way out. So from that initial encounter with all this law enforcement, I made a conscious decision that I'm going to start my life over, even if it is in prison.
Well, I got to figure out, exactly what the story was that got you there, and we'll do that in the course of this show. But I will say that you are maybe not the first person that found their rock bottom at the end of the wrong end, the business end of a gun barrel.
Yes, sir.
That's not, completely uncommon, but multiple barrels, all with itchy trigger fingers, from government agents on the other side, meaning very much serious business.
Yeah.
You might be the first one.
Well, this DEA, the FBI, the
Alphabet soup.
all of them were there, and even the IRS.
VATF.
IRS, the ATF,
Yeah, the ATF.
they had all of their
And the
people and guns
IRS.
there.
You really did
the
have them
IRS
all.
was there. Yeah.
NBC, ABC, CBS.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get this out front and deal with it. You are pretty much sponsored, it seems. I watched a video on you that had to do with Miller.
Yep.
Miller Industries, Miller Technologies, Miller
Welding.
Welding.
Yeah, so
and you're wearing a
Miller
shirt this
Electric.
morning. So clearly this is a group that has not just embraced you, they don't have any problem with you telling your story, your seedy story of the soft underbelly of America, in relationship to their product, which I find to be very, very refreshing.
Well, so that took a lot of work. So, I started welding as a hobby in my garage in 2007 or 8, and I wanted to build a couple rat rod bicycles for my son and I. So that's what kicked all that off. And, the very first welder that I got that was actually decent, that I could use and put down some good welds, was a Miller welder. And I swore loyalty to that brand and not buy anything else, any more junk, because that brand and their products worked. So continued building cool stuff out of my garage. After the bicycles, I landed somehow this giant sculpture for Rock City, and I'm still self-taught at this time. I have several different kinds of machines in my garage, and ended up winning Artist of the Year through the Chamber of Commerce for that.
Wow.
For that project. And so, I was always after wanting to be partnered with Miller. And so I'm like, the best way to do that is to go to the places that they're at and find out who is over their social media marketing and try to make friends with that person and sell myself,
And you did.
as having something to contribute. And, I have to not give credit just to me and my, endeavors of trying to make that happen. But, I used LinkedIn as a tool to friend as many people from that business as I could. And one of the people I friended was I guess he is an engineer, right? And he was like in my area out of Birmingham. And so he started to come to visit me, supporting me, seeing all the different things that we do, learning about me, building a relationship with me. And he is actually the ones that went to bat for me, because the marketing team, I've never hidden what my past is. And so I always talk freely about it, because I use it as a teaching tool to help inspire others. And when their outside agency, their marketing team learned about my criminal background, it was a huge red flag, and they didn't want to partner with me. But because of the relationship I built with this engineer from Miller Electric, he's like, you guys work for us, and us as a corporate entity, think that Michael would be a good match, so you're going to partner with us. So it's kind of a backdoor thing.
I want to give them congratulations seriously on that, because that's extremely sensitive and open-minded to them. And I can say in my story, that my abuse, my use, my cavalier attitude towards substances and using them in blatant opposition and defiance of all norms around here, it was part of my story. But in the media, you pretty much run into the same thing. You're not going. Sean Whitfield, who helps us out with this podcast, we're using the Whitfield Media, studios here. He knows media, and nobody else involved in the world of television and radio could all of a sudden just come out of the closet and say, "Hey, y'all, I smoke dope every day. I drink Texas and have wild parties." You would never get away with that. You'd be terminated immediately. But because I guess, started off with that already, I have no skeletons in the closet. All mine are out there dancing around for everybody to see. It just kind of became part and parcel. And I think it actually helped a lot of people, because they saw me go through my struggles. They saw me have fun. Maybe I misled a few. Then they saw me go through my struggles. Then they saw me actually come into recovery. And I think that's been a very powerful tool. So I'm sure it is for you as well.
Yeah, so especially with my family, because like one of the hardest things for me to kind of work my way through when I was incarcerated is the loss of relationship that I ruined with my father, And so like I knew personally inside, even from when the day I got in trouble, was that, I'm going to fix life and things are going to get better, and I'm going to fix my relationships. And one of the most important ones was with my dad. So during my time of incarceration, I'd write him letters every now and then. But, really it took about every day of 2 years, at least 2 years. I had to have at least 2 years for all the critical thinking and all of my brain function to come back and not play the victim, not blame others, fully account, myself, hold myself accountable for my actions, regardless of, environmental circumstances from growing up. And so he didn't really experience, like I remember the last letter I got from him before I started leaving him alone, because I was trying to push him and like, look, you made mistakes. I made mistakes, but I'm here and I'm doing what I can about them now. You're not high and mighty, right? Is kind of the perception I left off on. And he sent me a letter back. He's like, I love you, but the only thing that you do in life is hurt the people that you say you love.
Ouch.
And I had to eat that, and I had to think about it, and I had to just like accept own it, right? And it was a really hard thing for me to do, but I did it. And so at that point in time, it's like, okay, maybe I'm going about all this wrong. Maybe I just need to work on concentrating on myself for now, and then maybe someday he'll come around. And then even after I got out of prison, I thought, okay, my dad's going to come back in my life. I'm better now. I knew I was better now. I knew I had new goals and had a different, stream for my life. But still, he wouldn't really much. He'd only love me from a distance. He told me that he had to see that I was going to get out and live life for myself before getting back involved with me, because the only thing that I ever did was hurt him.
And you understand the nature of co-addiction too.
Yeah.
And that you can't expect everybody to jump to your tune after you basically made them, dance to a fiddle that they didn't want to dance to for so long. Before I want to go back and talk about the process that got you there, but also what got you to the beginning of the process. Before we get into Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine and go back too far, though, get a plug in for your actual business, the GarageBound LLC, and what you do there, and how you mentor, and how it's become a real healing, proposition for a lot of people.
So GarageBound LLC was started in my 2-car garage. The funny people's like, how did you come up with a name like that? So I was my wife now, she wasn't my wife then, but she was living with me in my home. And one cold morning day when I was building the sculpture for Rock City, I was all bundling up, and I'm like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man with all these different layers on, and I said, I'm garage bound, like headed to the garage,
and it's stuck.
And that's kind of where I came up with my business name. So I started in a 2-car garage to where I just had a little sliver down the middle after collecting tools and equipment for so long. Then she had a house not far from us, and I'm like, let's do this. Let's build a house. Let's build a shop in the backyard for over a year, right? And because we had tenants in the house, and when they're year lease, we'll tell the tenants what we're doing, and then we'll give them a discount for the inconvenience while we're building the shop. But they only planned on being there for a year till they found a permanent residence anyway. So then we'll move back into that house in a year, and that's I'll have more space.
You shop next door.
Shop in the backyard, yeah. So we did that, and it worked about almost a year to the day before the city came and gave me the pink card to stop doing what I was doing because all the grinder noise and stuff. But the first time they came, it was still just a hobby. I hadn't started a business. I was making a little money on the side, but nothing real. And then the second time they came, I was so fed up with my day job, and my wife told me, if you can make $400 a week, you can quit your day job. I'm like, shoot, I can buy and sell crap for $400 a week, right? So
not drugs.
No, but drug dealing taught me a lot of things about how to do things like that,
sure,
but in a positive and constructive way.
Hey, it's capitalism. It's capitalism, folks. Keep that in mind.
So the second time the city came out with their little pink book, there was no denying that I'd actually started a business. I had all these utility trailers torn apart, and I had an employee by that time. But what I also had was a commercial building off Amnicola that I was able to secure with the help of my father, and by that time, and I was getting a new roof put on it and the electrical system upgraded, and I had to gut a quarter of the shop area where it had offices and 2-story. You could just look up and see the sky. The building was in pretty bad shape. So I told him, I'm like, look, I got a commercial facility. Yes, I'm running a business now. I understand I can't do that here, but can you give me like a month, please? Because I'm having to put a roof on the building and electrical in the building so that I can run my business there, and I'm going to move all my stuff there, and you won't have no more problems from me. And so he's like, I'll give you 2 months to stop what you're doing. So he's a really nice man. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I kind of weighed the odds of, I'm not doing drugs or shooting people or any of these other crazy things. I'm trying to better my life. And even the city inspector saw, that I was being sincere. And I told him, I said, last time you came here, I promise, I didn't have a business. This was just my hobby, but I'm able to now turn it into a business, and I have a plan.
Happen organically.
Yeah.
And everybody just stop the clock for a second, mark that down. City inspector was nice guy. You never hear that. You never hear that from anybody. If somebody's out there to inspect, they're always out there to basically, make sure that they have a job by finding things wrong with you and what you're doing, So good for you. Now, did that become the shop that is now, 6,600 square feet from what I read?
Yes.
I could put 5 of my houses in that. I mean, seriously, that's a big place.
It's a big place, and it didn't take long to fill it up.
Can people just find you? Just do Googles it up on the interwebs and
so we're
find
really
GarageBound?
We're really active on social media. Miller is not our only corporate sponsor. We have a lot of different partnerships with the welding and fabrication industry. So anything that is GarageBound LLC, you can Google search that. We have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel that we've been,
And I saw some of that. I saw some of that actually. Just I don't do a ton of show prep, but I did enough to see exactly what that was all about and to see that you were so open with your use. We'll come back to that in a second. We will get in the Wayback Machine and go back and kind of talk about how you got started in your career of use and usage and overusage and abuse and addiction. Mary Catherine, before we do that though, take a second and just also give the good word about Cadis and the good folks over there that to support and sponsor this podcast.
I'd love to. So Chattanooga is so blessed and lucky to have Cadis around. We're celebrating 60 years this year, and to think in 1964 a group of guys got together and started Cadis, and over the years they've implemented so many solutions for post-treatment that are just phenomenal to really help and get your footing in your early days up to 2 years. And I think that's really what sets Cadis apart, the post-treatment options that are available that someone can jump on board with and be a part of up to 2 years.
1964.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, America is still reeling from the death of JFK. Vietnam is still a word most people are probably unfamiliar with. That's amazing.
It is amazing. The same year that I think Al Capone had his trial in Chattanooga.
Wow.
Yeah.
And thank you to Cadis for helping us do this thing, and I just appreciate you guys tuning in so much. We're going to get more into Michael's personal story in just a second.
Are you looking to bring your commercial project to life? Look no further, because the expert team of Robert Roberts General Contractors specializes in turning your vision into a reality. From concept to completion, Robert Roberts General Contractors handles every detail of your commercial project with precision and care, ensuring that your project is delivered on time and within budget. Robert Roberts General Contractor is a proud supporter of substance abuse recovery at Cadis. Let's dream big and take steps towards creating a community where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to reach their full potential. Support those on the path to recovery by donating to Cadis today.
Michael Brandt, our guest, GarageBound LLC, GarageBound, the name of his company, and just heard a little bit about that. And I want to go back in time real quick. I mean, we'll the way I like to conduct interviews is with no real plan whatsoever and no chronological timeline. So we'll jump back and forth and lurch around a little bit. But I know that you first, according to the little bit of bio I saw, that you first welded. Your first experience was at the tender age of 9. So it was something you already had kind of in you, and it was a magic moment for you, from what I gather. Were you already beginning to toy with substance abuse at that age?
It was a year after that, yeah.
So it closely coincided.
Yeah, so that welder was in my grandfather's workshop, and I can still smell his workshop of all the grease and oil. It's pretty cool. And oddly enough, my dad kept that welder over all the years, and he put it on a lawnmower frame to be able to move it around after my grandfather passed, and he brought it out to me several years ago, and it proudly hangs in the corner of my showroom.
Aww.
So it's pretty cool.
And I don't know anything about welding, MIG, TIG, SPIG. I have no idea what any of these things are. I know they're kind of schools. They're not just classifications, aren't they? Kind of a way of thought.
The welders?
Yeah.
Well, you use different welders for different things. You do use different processes for different things. Like, you're not going to go stick weld a bunch of aluminum. You'll have to move to a different type of welding welder and capabilities of that machine for that. So I don't. It's funny. We were at SEMA show. It's a trade show for like all things aftermarket for the automobile industry. And so we were in, Chip Foose was signing autographs in the Lincoln booth, and my friend that was with me wanted to look at their Torchmate CNC plasma table. And so we went over to the booth, and I had my Miller hat on, my Miller lanyard, and all my shop shirts say Miller, and yada yada. I was all Millered out, right? And the guy said, "Oh, are you guys here to see Chip Foose?" and get an autograph? I'm like, no, my buddy wanted to look at your Torchmate table. He's like, good, then get the hell out of here with all that Miller crap on. Right? And so I'm like, okay, this guy can play it, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah. I said, well, you'll be happy to know that I have, one Lincoln welder in my shop. And he interrupted me, and he's like, it probably still works, doesn't it? I'm like, it does work, but it welded like crap is why I went with Miller.
Oh, zing.
And he got so serious and angry, he could dish it out, but this man could not take it.
Note to self, don't question a welder's techniques and brand loyalty.
Yeah.
All right, so about your substance use, when did you actually start drifting into it, or did you hit it with a great big heave-ho right off the bat?
No, so my parents divorced, I guess, like when I was 9, I was visiting my dad at my grandfather's house because that's where he was living while my parents started their separation. And so like at 10, they got divorced, and I was, 20 miles from where he was living, staying with my mother and my 2 sisters. And I had like my mom was like going to like flight academy school to be a airline stewardess, and she just was like trying to get on her feet again. So that left me to my own devices from a very young age, and little to no accountability. Like I'd take off whenever I wake up in the morning and, come back sometime close to night, and I had all day to do anything that I wanted, and I made every bad decision that was really fun. You got
the perfect formula working for you now. Then.
Right. So I was hanging out with all the high school kids. I mean, I was in middle school, like at the post office parking lot, and they were doing all their tricks on their bicycles and skateboards and stuff like that. And that's where I first experienced smoking marijuana, was with those older kids there, and it was great. So it just snowballed from there. And then we lived in a predominantly Hispanic community at the time in Oregon. And, alcohol and drugs is a little different in that kind of community because Hispanics, they start drinking at a young age, and it's just kind of like smoking cigarettes.
Yeah,
right?
very, very much part of the culture.
So getting alcohol was super easy. We could just walk downtown and give some guy some money, and we could source alcohol really quick. So, that same time, I remember smoking pot and getting so damn drunk in my Blackberry forts, with all my buddies that I passed out in the bushes. And then, there was still plenty of time of daylight when I came to go ahead and make it home, and nobody knew any different.
So you like pot right off the bat, like drinking right off the bat. That's not where it stopped, though, I'm sure. Not if you're into federal level drug trafficking.
Right, it didn't stop there.
So the quick story, if you can.
Yeah, so let's see, I don't even remember. Oh, I do remember the first time. So I was in high school when I tried meth for the first time with my buddy, and that was great, man. We could stay up and have a lot of fun, and we could talk like a million miles an hour and stay. And so I started doing meth in high school, and that ended up being my drug of choice. Now, at the time, we were just scrambling to get little bits,
Circa what year are we talking about here?
Probably 95.
Because I remember meth,
94.
Meth was around back in the 70s, but nobody called it meth. They just called it speed. Yeah. It was speed. And speed was almost exclusively sort of the currency among bikers. It was a biker drug, and we get our hands on it occasionally, but it wasn't the in crowd that was doing speed back in those days. And then it blew up in the 80s.
Yeah,
it seemed like it kind of hit about the same time crack did. Really,
I've got crack stories too. We can get back into that.
Sure,
but we called it crank at that time, and it was all coming from Mexican sources.
Yeah, crank was another phrase that was used all the time, and it did. I guess it was more of a generic sense. If you were into speed, you were into crank, and it didn't mean crystal meth and just like ecstasy. Some people say Molly, some people others say X, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all an amphetamine, obviously. Speed and things of that nature. I've always found that to be a particularly insidious drug, though a really dangerous one, because I think it really does transform the user.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a long time for somebody to immediately see the negative physical and mental effects of crystal meth.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to get off of.
I didn't get my hands on any really good crystal until like 2000s when I started buying it by the pound. So that was it was always dirty, different colors, smelled like cat pee. This one was bright green, this one was white, chalky. So there was all different kinds of it.
Were you surprised at the success of Breaking Bad? Considering the fact that that's exactly what it was all about?
So I watched Breaking Bad start to finish, and I can tell you that and I had enough sobriety to where it didn't make me want to go use again, but a lot of the circumstances were a lot of the circumstances I was in.
Very realistic.
Very realistic, yeah. And so, I mean, I'd be watching and my heart would be beating like I was there, you know what I mean? So it did have a profound impact.
Familiarity.
Yeah, and familiarity.
Well, so when did you first, I mean, you're possessing things that are against the law, so you're already a scofflaw at this point. You're an outlaw. You're an outlier. You're on the wrong side. But at some point, you made a conscious decision, and I've discovered in my circle of friends, most of them never got to the point where their personal use necessitated them getting into dealing. I was on the verge of it. I would buy large amounts of coke to get myself a little bit, sell the rest of it. It would allow me to get my little free cut, so I could party. So I dealt, but I never dealt to the degree that you obviously did. I did go out to a couple of drops. I actually saw some airplane drops. So I'm not saying I was not a choir boy, but never got, I'm assuming, to the point where you did. When did you really jump in and say, I'm going to do this for money, and what was your motivation?
So I started in high school. I remember getting suspended from high school for selling pot at high school. They didn't catch me selling it. They just heard rumors and suspended me on the rumors anyway. And then I had to go and be a dumbass and beat the kid up that told on me, the two kids. So that got me in even more trouble, like in my fresh sophomore, junior year. But the hardcore dealing really didn't start until like 99, 2000, when I was just using meth primarily. And it got to the point where, I'm doing, 10 pounds of meth a week, 6 pounds of coke.
Good God.
And, running like, another 10 pounds of weed. Anything I could get my hands on. I was sending people to different states to get ecstasy. So like when I walked in my big container, I was like a mobile drugstore. I had a little bit of everything, but I primarily only did the meth. And I remember one time, like I had a girlfriend during the time right before I got in trouble. And like I just always had giant bags, about couple size of 2-liter bottles, and to just put a quarter pound onto the table and leave it with my girlfriend and her friends to have a good time while I leave for a few hours was nothing. It was just like I had to stop the amount of consumption that I was doing of the drugs because I had such a large liability of having to take $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 every other day to my connection to keep my...
Showed a level of very high functionality on your part. I mean, the most often quoted phrase in the world of drug dealing and the least followed is don't be tempted by your own supply. Don't dip into your own supply.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, so go look at Scarface. I mean, but that's the line that most people cross. And you actually had the presence of mind and at least a little bit of willpower. Well, you stuck to the thing that you liked and left the rest there.
Yeah, so it did, and I was an oddity from that standpoint because so many people around me just couldn't maintain. Like they couldn't keep track of the money. They couldn't keep track of their brain. So many things that they just couldn't keep track of during that time. And it was different for me for some reason. And, I felt, I don't know why, but, friends have always been important to me. And like, if consider you a friend, I got you no matter what. And at that point in time, I had to keep 2 cell phones and I couldn't keep them charged. I had people in taxi services that would say like, if you need me, my car in the alley with the trunk open and you need to get in and get the hell out of town, I got you, bro. So I had all these different things and organized for the transportation of what I was doing. And, it just like, I would be in their car charging 2 cell phones at a time and they'd just be ringing themselves to death around the clock. And so the reason I had 2 cell phones is because people are shady in that industry. So every week or so I'd have a new cell phone, and the people that I wanted to continue with, I gave them the new number, and the people I didn't want to continue with anymore, they didn't get the new number.
Just winnow them out. Well, I'm going to ask you this question personally. It's something that I noticed and something that I still deal with a lot of shame. I've been in recovery since 2006, but it'd be hard for me to count the number of people who I truly messed up and did a disservice to by making them think they could keep up with me, because I consumed a lot all the time and I had a capacity for it. And people looked at me and said, he can do it, I can do it. And they crashed and they burned. Many of them really did before I did. And I didn't understand why they couldn't maintain, they couldn't regulate. I'm going to assume you're moving at your pace. You probably even saw more.
Yeah, so I've got some specific stories, there was a lot of young females. When you're in that lifestyle, you're hanging out with a lot of young females, and they just couldn't take it. And it seems like they were the ones that were most likely to get you caught by the cops because they're doing stupid shit in hotel rooms. Like we stayed in a lot of hotel rooms, and I always had 2 hotel rooms in each hotel, so that I'd keep all the stash in one room, and then I'd be dealing out of another room. So whatever room I had the stash in was with the person I was with at the time that was most trusted, and the other room was a party room and where I did my business dealings. But I remember specifically there were families, like a wife and a husband that had kids, and when I met them, they had a house and they had a car, and they had their kids were clothed, and they had decent things going on for themselves. And by the time I was done with them, they were living in 24-hour crack motels. Their kids had no food and dirty, and they weren't clothed properly. And I sucked entirely everything that family had out of the family for my own greed. But at the time, I couldn't really see that. That didn't really hit me until I got clean myself. And then the amount of guilt and that I felt from doing that to a family instead of bringing a family or anybody up, for all that matters, was huge. And I had to deal with that personally, and use that as inspiration to going forward to only do things to better others and help myself and others.
It's those kind of scenarios that are really hard to make amends on, finding the people. And maybe they didn't see it the way you now see it, that, they hurt a lot because of something you may have done. Just an example you set, you weren't necessarily, egging them on or luring them in. The guy in the trench coat, hey, come here, little kid, look at this. Nothing like that. I know with cocaine, with me, I finally I stopped dealing with larger amounts of it when I actually got to the point where I was actually dealing with somebody who was so far up in the hierarchy in Atlanta. I called him the dog. Everybody did. I went to the dog's house one day and saw a very brief, shining example of just how dangerous these people were and what they were capable of doing. I mean, real evil. And I thought, this stuff's got blood on it. I mean, everything. I'm doing this for fun, but there are probably people dying along the way. Who knows how many, to get this to me so I can have some fun. And it hit me. And it actually fired up, an ethical switch in me. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be part of that supply chain.
Yeah.
Did you ever hit that wall intellectually, emotionally? Just maybe what I'm doing is wrong, before the guns were pointed at you in the hotel room?
Yeah, there were 2 different instances. One of the instances was that I had a tooth that needed to be removed. Right. I mean, meth is obviously part of the thing.
Bad on your teeth and bones.
Out. And so I went to the dentist, and they could just tell. I mean, I had track marks and everything, and they were like, you have to stay off drugs for at least 3 days so that our drugs will numb you so you don't feel this tooth coming out, right? And so I tried. I tried staying off of it for, I think I made it an entire day, and all the guilt of leaving my son and just what I was doing in life was so great that I couldn't, and I never got that tooth pulled.
1 day's worth of clarity.
I never got that tooth pulled till I got arrested, and they didn't use any Novocaine, so I felt it anyway.
Well, what got you caught? And a fairly brief synopsis.
Yeah. So the connections that we were dealing with got caught first, and they told on everybody they were dealing with. So it worked backwards, right? So I was walking into a 10-pound deal where I stood to make like $50K, right? And I was already wanting out. So there was a couple situations.
That's kind of what I was getting at a minute ago. You were wanting to already remove yourself, just weren't sure how you were going to do it.
Yeah, so there was it was nothing to have up to 5 pounds at a time on me, right? And this guy had this really badass 64 Chevy truck that I wanted real bad. And I was trying to give him a half a pound I was going to give him a half a pound of dope for this truck, right? And he was crying because he loved this truck and he didn't want to let it go, but he was so up on acid or on drugs at the time that he was making bad decisions as it was. I'm like, well, if somebody's going to get the truck, it might as well be me.
Might as well be me.
Yeah. So my plan was to take and get the truck and take 3 pounds of meth and head back to Washington and just like skip out on my dealers and everything. But that particular plan didn't work out. But what was in the works was as a 10-pound deal. And so I had to go to a different place to try to source that. There were several places to source it. And I went and met with the man. He said, okay, we can have it. And I'm like, well, I want to go there and make sure the money's there. You be down the road. And when I call, then you can bring it, because I'll know that it's a safe, good deal. And so I went and and then by that time, my regular connection called me. He's like, everything weird. I'm walking down this road. I'm like, well, shit, I'll come get you. So I go pick him up. But on the way back from that first source, there's helicopters following us. You know, I always had my wits about me enough to know what was going on.
Seemed like a red flag.
Yeah. But it's like, this is my make it or break it moment, you know. So do I follow through? Everything's in place, you know. I picked up my regular connection. He said everything was weird, and so I'm like, well, just go with me, you know. I got this deal in line. I'm going to make sure the money's there, and we can go forward from there. And as soon as he got in the car and he's tripped out, and we got to the hotel room, and the two guys that I had been dealing with that were introduced to me from out of town, but they were really undercover federal agents.
Feds,
yeah. As soon as we got there, he flipped 2 pounds of meth out onto the bed, like he knew what was going on. And as soon as that happened, the guys sat down on the bed, and the doors to the adjoining room swung open, and that's where all the weapons with all the triple letter agents were coming in on us.
Wow. All right, so the red flags were flying. Your spidey senses were tingling, but you just bored right ahead because that was the plan and you were sticking to it.
I was going to be able to get out with that money. It wouldn't have changed things, you know, but that was my out deal.
Mary Catherine, let me jump over to you real quick. I want to come back and talk about recovery here in a little bit. That is what we're supposed to be talking about, but can't get there until we tell the stories. Mary Catherine at Cadis, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know that this is not necessarily your wheelhouse, but are there any, we just ran through a whole bunch of substances. Are there any substances that Cadis says this is not what we do?
No, not that I can think of.
Acid, coke, crystal meth. I mean,
Right.
if it's in a substance that can be abused, and somebody has physical and psychological negative effects from using it and abusing it, you guys are there for them. There is no we don't deal with that attitude.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the majority of clients are on fentanyl now, but obviously there's a little bit of everything.
Give a plug for Cadis very quickly, if you would. Give a commercial, as it were, for our fine sponsors and supporters.
Absolutely. So we are celebrating our 60th anniversary this year, and Cadis not only has a 30-day treatment program, inpatient, but also has a multitude of post-treatment options, sober living, halfway house, single moms and dads, residences, lots of options to help clients get their footing in their early days of recovery up to 2 years. I encourage anyone who is out there battling addiction, you're not alone. Know that. There are people out there that can help you and want to help you. There are AA meetings. Cadis is in Chattanooga. Cadis.org. You can dive deep into all of our programs to see which one might work for you. And yeah.
I've noticed Cadis taking a little bit more of a high-profile stance in the community here recently. Not only this podcast been an example of, but also a whole bunch of new TV commercials that are very effective, that have been really fighting through the clutter and getting my attention lately. All right, so I mean, if you're out there and you're dealing with this, or somebody you love is dealing with this, Mary Catherine has her story. I have my story. Michael has his story. Lay them down on a table, come up with some sort of little, 0 to 100, scale. They might fall in different places, but the one thing we all know is that what we were doing did not work, and we're all at a point in life where we're trying to do much, much better, and we did it with the assistance of others.
If you're dreaming of spring gardening weather, visit the Barn Nursery for the best selection of plants to bring on the spring blooms. The Barn Nursery is the South's premier garden center and a proud supporter of alcohol and drug abuse recovery at Cadis. Discover the elegance and charm of generations past at Brody Jewelers. With a legacy of craftsmanship and quality, Brody Jewelers offers a curated collection of exquisite pieces that tell stories of love and legacy. From vintage heirlooms to modern masterpieces, each piece carries a rich history waiting to be cherished by you. Visit Brody Jewelers today and experience the magic of this family-owned, historical, fine jewelry store, where every piece is a work of art and every customer is family. Brody Jewelers is a proud supporter of Cadis.
When she mentioned fentanyl, when Mary Catherine mentioned fentanyl, my guest, Michael Brandt, kind of shook his head knowingly. And I'm just going to ask you the question. We were actually just kind of during that little break, mentioned a couple of drugs that I wish they hadn't been around when I was there, and there's a bunch that I'm very glad I wasn't around when they came about. Fentanyl I'm going to ask you the same thing. Had it already hit the scene when you were still using? Because I look at it now and go, my God, there's no way I'd be here. There's no way I'd be here on this planet today drawing breath above ground if that dangerous substance, chemical, had been out there when I was partying.
Thank God that wasn't out there when I was out there. I never even heard of it when I was out there. I left the scene, I think, in 2001. So it was never on my radar. But I'm glad it wasn't, because I injected my drugs, and everything's laced with it now. It probably would have killed me and many people, and then that would have been, there's some pretty horrible, penalties for dealing drugs like that people are killing themselves on. I don't think that I would like to think that I would not have dealt drugs like that people die on. But the bottom line is that when you're in the middle of it and you're doing it too, that's really not a consideration.
And to die from an overdose as collateral damage for something you didn't even know you were doing or getting seems to be especially tragic. Take tragic in, times two.
Yeah.
The fact that you think you're doing one thing and end up getting dosed with another, and that's the one that takes you out. Maybe that's poetic justice. Now, when did you start your path down recovery? Was it at that moment when the guns were pointed at you and you came to that conclusion?
It was at that moment.
I've stayed on this wrong road long enough to end up in the wrong place. What do I do now?
Yeah, so I just made a conscious decision to do better for myself and do different. I was just so unhappy. So that, one of the things that really helped me, getting my life back together was writing. I had so much anger and stuff cooped up inside of me, and somehow I found, by accident, I think, if I could write it out on paper, then that was one less thing I had to carry, and I could go on to the next of many problems. So while I was incarcerated, we had to, I spent a year in county jail, so I wrote all these poems, lyrics, whatever you want to call them, and got a bunch of that crap out. And the cool thing is I still have a copy of every one of them, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to put them all organized and write them into a book one day.
Oh, you've got a book. You've got a book in you without a doubt. And you add that stuff.
I just have to add the stories like we're talking about.
Yeah. Interspersed with your thoughts that were put down in lyric form, I think would be fascinating, no doubt about it. There's so much more to the story. We jumped from, you beginning, using drugs to, being busted in a hotel with enough drugs to literally make a family TV time drama, out of it.
So, but when I was in prison, after finally getting to prison, after sitting in jail, in county jail for, because there was like 27 people under indictment, and so that all those people had to go to court and all that, so it took like a year to process all that, and then there's a federal transfer facility, I think, in Oklahoma. And they don't tell you where you're going, right? They have all these different classifications in the federal prison system, and you don't find out where you're going until you are on the transport bus leaving the facility, right? And it was especially true for me because they chose to put me in a maximum security United States penitentiary in California. And so when we were in the van headed to the airplane, like Con Air, it's a jet that you load up through the tail end, then they're like, "Yep, Brandt, you're going to USP Atwater," and the whole van full of people say, "Oh." I'm like, "Oh, what is a USP Atwater?"
So
right?
But Alcatraz, Folsom, Leavenworth, Angola, down in Louisiana.
Yeah, it wasn't really scary until after I got on the yard, after going through processing and all that. But every gang imaginable was there. You had all the Norteños, the Sureños, the Paisas. You had, all the East Coast black gangs, and you had, Native American tribes that were basically a gang. You had Asian gangs, and then the people I was the most afraid of were the white gangs. Because like I grew up in a
all skinhead gangs.
Yeah, all the skinhead.
Could you be white and be in a gang and not be a skinhead, or was that just a required necessity?
Well, it kind of is and kind of isn't. I was not the normal inmate. So, like, when I grew up in a diverse community, right?
Yeah.
Most of my friends were Hispanic, and by fifth grade, they started killing each other and, jumping into all these gangs and stuff. And I'm like, we were just playing soccer last year, man. Now you want to kill dude? We were friends with them last year. So I didn't really understand that. But regardless, when I got there, like, all the skinheads rush you. They want every new young white guy to be hanging out with them and
like
doing
a college freshman.
Yeah. And so I was hanging out with them just for a day or two, and I'm like, yeah, I came here to, learn my lesson. And they started laughing at me. Come to prison to learn your lesson, not getting no more trouble. And I was like, I already had my mind made up, so that told me right then I'm not hanging out with these guys.
Did you have to detox completely on your own in the prison system? Was there any kind of rehab facility or protocol or anything set aside?
No, I slept for about 2 weeks. I slept until I couldn't sleep no more, but I had been up for like 2 weeks. It was nothing uncommon to be up for 7 to 14 days at a time.
And of course, you're completely out of your brain at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you begin to hallucinate after 5-6 days of not sleep. Most people.
Yeah.
But again, your system might have been geared for it.
I had safe places. I had one particular safe place that when that time was coming, I'd call him and he'd pick me up anywhere and he'd take me to his house. And me and my dog
Crash
my dog, and he'd put me someplace, and it was a place that was safe for me just to go ahead and sleep for several days, and I wouldn't have to worry about any of my stuff being missing.
Did you start attending meetings while in prison?
No, I didn't do any meetings in prison.
None?
No, I wrote. That was kind of my meetings.
So when you were released from prison, what was the formula for you?
So when I was released from prison, I knew two things. I couldn't have friends that did alcohol and drugs, and I couldn't have a girlfriend that did alcohol and drugs. And that's all I knew, that I was sticking by 100% no matter what. And so, but when I got released, I didn't know where I was going to get released. You have to go somewhere, right, when you get out. And like I finally got transferred after 2 years from USP Atwater to FCI Talladega, and I asked to go there because my son was close to there and his grandma could bring him to see me. I'm like, well, at least I can start building a relationship with my son through visitation, if I could get to this prison. So I did I took every adult continuing education class I could while I was at Atwater. One of the smartest things I did when I was younger was got my GED, so that allowed me to teach in the education department.
Saw that in your bio. The GED made a lot of difference for you.
Yeah, so I was, that in that crazy environment, it put me in a real good place because I was teaching the murderer from Compton. I was teaching, this Sereno because it was a requirement that you had to get your GED while you were in there before you could have a good paying prison job, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was friendly and nice to all those men. And, when got crazy on the yard, they're like, hey, leave the teacher alone. He helps all of us. I'm like, to what he said, I'm just going over here,
So the obviously you got your life together and did a lot of it on your own, it seems to me. Just from listening to you, was there ever a point where did you have a mentor? Did you have anybody or a group of people that you looked to, and as a group consciousness thing, did you fess up to and embrace, or is this something? Did you just kind of white knuckle it all the way through? I
didn't. Today I have several mentors that are really important in my life, and I didn't really learn about mentors until after I was released from prison. My sister told me if I promised I was done getting in trouble, I could move to Tennessee with them and stay with her and her family and start my life over, and they'd help me find a job and all that.
That brought you to Chattanooga?
That's what brought me to Chattanooga.
If I haven't said that, he is a Chattanooga resident now, and he lives here, and the garage is here. Garage Band is all here in town.
Yes, sir.
And so keep on going, I'm sorry.
And so when I moved here, knowing that I couldn't have a girlfriend or friends that did alcohol or drugs is when I found AA. So I'd already had a lot of time clean and sober, and so I used AA as a social network to establish, the type of people that I wanted to hang out with, and that was really a smart move, I think.
Again, Mary Catherine, if somebody's out there, if you have gotten yourself free of the substance that you abused, that in turn abused you, you don't have to be handshaking, detoxing from it to go to an AA meeting. You could be years into it and still find something extremely helpful for your life. I personally believe that everybody out there listening, even if you've never smoked one joint in your life, if you've never had a drink, there are things in this 12-step program that would greatly, greatly assist you in life.
I agree. One of the things I got to participate in was a 500-hour residential drug treatment program they called RDAP, and it was a drug class, right? So, and I got to take advantage of it. I barely got to get a year off for it because I had, like when I was younger, a violent charge of some kind. Not like killing nobody or anything, but like fight or assault or something. But man, I was the dork up in the front with my pocket protector full of pins and the tape between my eyes on the glasses. And I took that class so seriously, and 90% of that class was really just retraining. it was just a life on life's terms, like retraining your brain on how to get by in life, because so many people never had that kind of just normal bring up with how to deal with life, growing up.
We got to wrap things up pretty quickly here, but I don't want to let you go until I just mention the fact that we use the word mentoring, and now, of course, Michael is mentoring young people through welding. I mean, welding has become an outlet for him and for others for creativity, for purpose. And he takes it very seriously. If I was to describe him right now, I'd say, think about the Ed Asner's character in Up when he's a kid, and he's got those little glasses. He's got his welding glasses on top. He's ready to go. He's ready. He's ready to spot weld right now if he needs to. But what a great place to end up in.
Well, I know that, if you're going to get rid of some bad behaviors, you need to replace them with something that's interesting or more interesting in a positive, constructive way. And I found that in welding. Being able, it's like Legos on steroids. And if you can't find the Lego that you want, you can just go make it, And so that's how I relate to kids with it now. Like when I sit up at trade shows, I have a table all the way on the end full of Legos, and I'm watching that table. And if a little kid comes up and the welding helmet will fit on their head, then I will, if you like Legos, you probably like what I do. And then I'd take them over and I'd teach them how to TIG weld aluminum or something.
Do you think you could teach anybody? I mean, you're looking at a guy right here, all right? If I can't face it with a hammer, it's time to call somebody. My motto is, that's why God made a checkbook, because I have no skills. If you give me a screwdriver, I can mess up a crowbar. Do you think you could actually teach me how to do something?
Yeah, and I'm a really good teacher, and since I did all the R&D and learned how to do it on my own, there's some other things that I learned later on that were really helpful, different processes and stuff, that I can get somebody that's never TIG welded aluminum stacking dimes in probably an hour.
All right. Stacking dimes. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming by. You got a fascinating story, and there's so much more to it. And are you open to speaking engagements? Other people that might say, this would be a good day to come and bring to talk to this class, to this group, maybe the Scouts. I don't know. There's any number of organizations out there.
Well, we used to work with the Boy Scouts until the Boy Scouts let the girls in, and I didn't believe it anymore.
Well, certainly you're right.
I'm not going to do that. Girls have Girl Scouts, boys have Boy Scouts, and so they lost a valuable resource there, and it's really unfortunate because the only ones suffering are the kids.
Well, I'm glad you were here. And Mary Catherine, thank you for bringing in another fascinating guest. And keep on listening, all right? Scarred But Smarter, the name of the podcast. And I believe, like I said, I think this is our 5th show. And we've been enjoying doing it. I hope you guys are enjoying listening to it. I want you to share and support the sponsors, vote for this podcast with your feet and with your pocketbook whenever you get a chance.
Scarred But Smarter is presented by CADIS, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, Chattanooga's only nonprofit addiction recovery center with a full continuum of care, offering the highest quality of treatment to those struggling with substance abuse disorder, regardless of their ability to pay. Go to cadis.org to learn more about our recovery and aftercare programs, or to make a donation, because every gift is much needed and greatly appreciated. Thank you for letting us be a part of your journey. Find us online at cadis.org.
Ferguson Bath Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, your destination for luxury home products that elevate every room in your house. Whether you're renovating your dream bathroom, designing a gourmet kitchen, or illuminating your living space with style, Ferguson has everything you need to turn your vision into reality. Transform your home into a sanctuary of sophistication with Ferguson Bath Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, where luxury meets inspiration. Ferguson proudly supports CADIS.
If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol or drug abuse, reach out, seek support. Recovery is within reach. You are not alone, and CADIS will support you or your loved one every step of the way. Please call CADIS today for an assessment, 423-756-7644.